I think they would have surrendered anyway, but I mean, a lot later, because even after the 2 bombs went off.
When Prince Philip's long-hidden letter was finally revealed, the royal world was thrown into shock. Known for his sharp mind and unwavering devotion to the crown, the Duke left a private directive. His personal fortune would go solely to Catherine, Princess of Wales, explicitly excluding Queen Consort Camilla. The words, precise and deliberate, ignited whispers of loyalty, power, and hidden influence within palace walls. But what did Philip's final decision truly mean? And why has it left royal watchers around the globe utterly stunned? This is the story behind the sealed letter that changed everything. The secret letter that shook the crown. What started as an ordinary day in the royal archives quickly turned into a moment that would shake the foundations of the monarchy. Amid stacks of dusty estate documents, a long-forgotten sealed envelope caught the attention of an archivist. It was unmistakably marked with Prince Philip's distinctive seal and handwriting, its presence almost ghostly beneath decades of paperwork. The contents, once revealed, would not only surprise those present, it would send shockwaves through the corridors of power, upending expectations and quiet palace routines alike. Inside that delicate, time-worn letter lay a directive no one had anticipated. Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, had made an extraordinary choice. His personal fortune, entirely separate from the crown's official accounts, was to be entrusted to Catherine, Princess of Wales. Notably, Queen Consort Camilla was explicitly excluded by name.
I have to admit, in the end, I ended up probably being a sort of pony-mad child.
In one swift stroke, the letter redrew lines of loyalty, influence, and succession within the palace, turning what was once private wealth into a symbol of trust and intention. The archivist who first opened the envelope could hardly believe what lay before them. Shock quickly rippled through the senior courtiers in the room. Eyes widened, whispers grew urgent, and the weight of the revelation pressed on everyone present. This was not simply a matter of inheritance. It was a carefully calculated act with consequences far beyond money. Efforts to quietly shelve the letter, to contain the fallout and avoid scandal, proved futile. The keeper of the Privy Seal, recognizing the gravity of Philip's final wishes, intervened immediately, ordering the letter's authentication and insisting that the Duke's instructions be fully respected. The words inside the envelope carried the unmistakable precision and authority of Philip himself. They read not like a traditional will, but like a final declaration, a personal and political statement intertwined. It was as if the Duke were speaking from beyond the grave, warning of potential fractures within the royal family, and taking decisive steps to safeguard the monarchy's future. By bypassing Camilla and directing his wealth to Catherine,
just about happy, healthy children. This is about the society I hope we could and can become.
Philip had made his stance abundantly clear. He placed his trust, his loyalty, and his legacy in the hands of the woman he believed embodied the stability, discipline, and unyielding dedication the crown required. The implications of the letter were immediate and profound. Inside Clarence House, where Camilla and King Charles had long assumed a quiet permanence of influence, panic quietly spread. Advisors scrambled to understand the legal and political ramifications, while rumors of the letter's contents began to circulate through hushed palace channels. What had been a sealed envelope tucked away among mundane estate papers had, in a single moment, become a royal earthquake, shifting allegiances and power in ways no one had anticipated. This was Prince Philip's final act, not a simple distribution of wealth, but a calculated, decisive, and highly personal intervention aimed at protecting the monarchy he had devoted his life to. And at the center of it all stood Catherine, suddenly entrusted with a legacy that was far greater than money. It was a test of loyalty, judgment, and the enduring influence of one of the most private and powerful figures in modern royal history. Prince Philip has reportedly granted Princess Catherine full access to his personal fortune. But why did he make this extraordinary decision? And what qualities did he see in Catherine that made him trust her with such a responsibility? Now let's uncover the remarkable reasons behind Philip's choice. 2 futures, 1 choice. To truly grasp the seismic impact of Prince Philip's sealed letter, one must first look back at the final years of his extraordinary life. a period when the monarchy quietly fractured from within. The Duke of Edinburgh, who had spent decades serving the crown with unwavering devotion, became increasingly aware that the institution he loved was facing a crossroads. Behind the polished public appearances and ceremonial smiles, two starkly different visions for the future were emerging, each pulling the monarchy in a separate direction. On one side stood Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, symbols of stability, restraint, and enduring duty. Philip admired them not merely as family, but as embodiments of the monarchy's essential principles. He saw in Catherine a steadfast calm, an instinctive understanding of the weight of responsibility, and an unshakable loyalty to the institution itself. To Philip, she was someone who could uphold the crown's dignity under the relentless glare of public scrutiny, maintaining the delicate balance between tradition and modernity. William and Catherine represented the future Philip longed to secure, a monarchy that would survive generations not through spectacle, but through quiet strength, discipline, and continuity. On the other side were King Charles and Queen Consort Camilla.
We also share with so many of you in the United Kingdom, in all the countries,
whose influence Philip increasingly viewed as unpredictable and potentially destabilizing. Behind closed doors, he observed shifts in priorities and subtle power realignments within Charles's household, often centered around Camilla's expanding reach. Her presence, while socially accepted and publicly normalized, raised Philip's concern about blurred loyalties and the erosion of the monarchy's singular purpose. In his eyes, the crown's strength lay in clarity, in the cohesion of its members toward a shared goal, and he feared the emerging dynamics threatened that unity. Philip's growing unease was not born of personal animosity. It was strategic. He had seen monarchies crumble across Europe when internal divisions festered unchecked. He understood the dangers of parallel lines of influence. Competing centers of authority could weaken public trust, disrupt succession, and erode the institution's authority. More than titles or wealth, it was the survival of the crown itself that weighed on him. And so, when the time came to leave his final mark, Philip acted decisively. The sealed letter was never meant to be ordinary.
With the pack-away refrigerator, for instance, it's all very well now. You look back and say, well,
Its instructions were far more than a distribution of personal wealth. They were a statement of judgment, loyalty, and foresight. By granting access to his private fortune solely to Catherine and deliberately excluding Camilla, Philip made his choice unmistakable. He was naming the custodian of his legacy, someone he trusted to protect not only his assets, but the monarchy's future. Philip's directive was a message encoded in authority, foresight, and familial responsibility. It declared that, in the contest between continuity and unpredictability, Catherine stood as the stabilizing force, the embodiment of the principles he had championed for decades. It was not inheritance alone that he was passing on. It was the torch of responsibility, the safeguard of tradition, and the assurance that the crown would endure in capable hands. In the end, the sealed letter was far more than a legal document. It was Philip's final verdict, his ultimate choice, and his declaration to the monarchy and the world. The future rests with Catherine. Prince Philip trusted Catherine to protect not only his legacy, but also the future of the crown, which is why he entrusted her with this extraordinary honor. But did Philip really have a personal fortune? How did he build it? And what was its value when he passed away? Let's find out. The Iron Duke's hidden fortune. Prince Philip's sealed letter carries enormous weight not just because of what it said, but because of the man who wrote it, and the fortune tied to his name. When the Duke of Edinburgh passed away at the age of 99, the world remembered him as the Queen's steadfast companion, the nation's longest-serving consort, and the fiercely independent figure often called the Iron Duke. But behind that public image was another truth, one that many never fully understood. Philip had quietly built a remarkably large personal fortune over the course of his long life. At the time of his death, Philip left behind an estimated $58,500,000, a staggering amount considering that much of his financial life unfolded away from public attention. His wealth did not sprout from sudden windfalls or unexpected inheritances. Instead, it grew from a lifetime marked by discipline, royal upbringing, and an unwavering belief in managing one's own affairs with precision. Before he ever walked beside Queen Elizabeth II as her husband, Philip was already a royal in his own right. Born on a kitchen table on the island of Corfu in 1921, he entered the world as Prince Philip of Greece and Denmark, a member of the House of Glucksburg. His early years were shaped by privilege and turmoil, royal palaces, sudden exile, and long stretches of uncertainty that taught him resilience and self-reliance.
I didn't know anything about this. I went to Aachen.
These experiences shaped the man he later became, practical, determined, and keenly aware of the difference between public wealth and private security. When he married then Princess Elizabeth in 1947, Philip did not simply step into a life of luxury. He stepped into a life of duty, and with that duty came certain financial arrangements meant to support his role. One of the most important was his annual royal allowance, drawn from the sovereign grant, a fund supported by British taxpayers and designed to cover official expenses. Each year, Philip received roughly $686,000 for his public work as the Queen's husband and Prince Consort. Unlike many who might rely on a royal allowance, Philip treated his funds as a tool, not a crutch. Known for his careful spending and disdain for waste, he repaired, reused, and invested wisely, quietly building a solid personal fortune. Even modest choices, like driving old cars or fixing things himself.
Well, I think they would have surrendered anyway, but I mean, a lot later, because even after the 2 bombs went off,
reflected a disciplined approach that over decades transformed his allowance into a substantial and independent financial legacy. It wasn't only the allowance that grew his fortune. Philip also benefited from private family assets, long-standing trusts, naval service income from his early military career, and the inheritance of personal items, shares, and estates tied to both the Greek and Danish royal lines. Yet even with these advantages, it was Philip's discipline, his dislike of extravagance, his respect for order, and his sharp attention to detail that allowed his wealth to grow quietly and steadily. By the end of his life, Philip's financial independence had become a symbol of his personality, firm, private, carefully managed, and entirely his own. And that is precisely why the contents of his sealed letter matter so much, because this fortune, built over nearly a century, was his to give. And the person he chose to entrust with it would carry a message far deeper than money alone. Over the years, Prince Philip built a personal fortune through his royal background and role as the Queen's husband. Now, having entrusted the fortune to Catherine, how will she handle this responsibility? And will Camilla accept it quietly? Now let's explore Catherine's secret summons and the fury it unleashed behind palace doors. The battle lines drawn. Catherine was quietly summoned to Windsor, called away from her usual schedule without explanation. The air in the palace felt unusually heavy as she entered a private room, its walls lined with centuries of royal history. There, in the stillness, she was presented with a sealed envelope, a document that would alter the course of her life and shift the balance of power within the monarchy.
Having been lucky enough to meet some of our country's amazing charities and organizations.
The letter was opened, and the words inside carried the unmistakable weight of Prince Philip himself. It was clear immediately. He had chosen her to guard his personal legacy, a task far greater than managing wealth or titles. She had been entrusted with something profoundly symbolic, the stewardship of the Duke of Edinburgh's private fortune and, more importantly, the responsibility to uphold the principles he had devoted his life to protecting. Though she maintained her composure outwardly, internally, she understood the stakes. Philip's decision placed her in direct opposition to Queen Consort Camilla, whose influence within the palace had long been assumed unshakable. It was a delicate position, requiring both discretion and precision. Catherine did not act impulsively. Instead, she quietly sought guidance from Princess Anne, one of the few royals whose loyalty, judgment, and understanding of Philip's intentions she could trust. In whispered conversations and careful counsel, Anne provided perspective, allowing Catherine to navigate the situation with subtlety Rather than confrontation, understanding the power of silent signals, Catherine began strategically distancing herself from Camilla, cutting off direct communications, avoiding private meetings, and keeping interactions strictly professional. In a household that thrived on subtlety and nuance, her silence became louder than any words of defiance. Every glance, every unspoken choice sent a clear message. Philip's wishes were to be honored, and Catherine would uphold them. Camilla's reaction was immediate, intense, and unmistakable. Humiliated and furious, she moved quickly to assert control and counteract the challenge to her authority. She pressured senior advisors, ensuring that the chain of information and decision-making would favor her influence. She redirected high-profile patronages previously associated with Philip, signaling her continued prominence in the royal hierarchy. Determined to elevate her own family, she maneuvered strategically to increase their visibility and relevance within palace affairs. Even those closest to the archive were not spared. The archivist who had authenticated Philip's letter became a target, caught between loyalty to the Duke's wishes and the demands of the Queen Consort. Within hours, the palace had transformed into a battlefield, not of open arguments, but of whispered strategies, covert maneuvers, and quiet yet deliberate signaling. Every decision, every reassignment of duties, every subtle shift of protocol became a move on an invisible chessboard. Philip's sealed letter had done more than dictate the distribution of his fortune. It had drawn the battle lines, dividing factions, revealing alliances, and igniting a quiet war of influence that would shape the monarchy's future. In that moment, Catherine was no longer just a Princess of Wales. She had become the central figure in a high-stakes struggle for loyalty, legacy, and the very heart of the crown. Entrusting Catherine with Philip's fortune has stirred controversy within the monarchy. Could it spark divisions among royal factions? Which side might gain the upper hand? And what could give them the advantage? Let's uncover the details. Factions, secrets, and the sunset clause. As the palace braced for the fallout from Prince Philip's sealed letter, it quickly became clear that a power struggle was unfolding behind closed doors. Two factions began to emerge, each operating with precision, strategy, and quiet determination. On one side was Camilla's camp, known informally within palace corridors as the Clarion Ring. Composed of advisors loyal to the Queen Consort, this faction was intent on safeguarding her influence and diminishing the impact of Philip's directive. They moved swiftly, leveraging long-standing relationships, protocol expertise, and institutional knowledge to attempt to neutralize the threat posed by the Duke's letter. Every action, from press management to patronage reassignment, was carefully calculated to maintain Camilla's hold over palace affairs and to counter any challenge from those who might support Catherine. Opposing them, operating with quiet resolve, was a group that quickly became known as the Inner Four, Catherine's discreet yet formidable defenders. This coalition consisted of Princess Anne, Duchess Sophie, Sir Clive Alderton, and Lord Fellows, each a figure of unwavering loyalty, sharp intellect, and deep understanding of both royal protocol and Philip's intentions. Their mission was clear: to protect Catherine, uphold the Duke of Edinburgh's wishes, and ensure that the monarchy remained aligned with the principles Philip had spent his life defending. Unlike the Clarion Ring, the Inner Four relied not on overt displays of power but on subtle strategic maneuvers, precise legal interpretations, and careful management of sensitive communications. As the Inner Four delved into the intricate web of Philip's holdings, investments, trusts, and offshore accounts painstakingly curated over decades, they uncovered a document that would change the stakes entirely. Buried deep within a secure Geneva vault was a sealed annex previously unknown to the broader palace. Within its folds lay a staggering legal directive, the so-called Sunset Clause. This clause was more than a mere instruction. It was a binding, airtight legal mechanism that permanently barred Camilla and any of her descendants from claiming access to Philip's personal fortune or any institutions tied to his private legacy. Its language was unambiguous, leaving no room for challenge, negotiation, or reinterpretation. Even King Charles, confronted with the clause's authority, could not alter its effects without risking the complete forfeiture of Philip's carefully curated estate. The revelation sent immediate ripples through the palace hierarchy. Protocol officers whispered, advisors recalculated alliances, and the balance of influence began to tilt quietly, but unmistakably toward Catherine. The clarion ring scrambled to respond, yet the inner four had the advantage of foresight, legal clarity, and the weight of Philip's explicit intentions behind them. What had begun as a private archival discovery had escalated into a full-blown, strategic confrontation, with the very future of royal influence and succession hanging in the balance. Philip's sunset clause was not simply about wealth, it was about control, legacy, and the preservation of the monarchy's core principles. In one quiet, calculated sweep, he had drawn the lines of allegiance, determined the custodians of his legacy, and reshaped the palace's internal hierarchy. The stakes were clear. Whoever upheld his vision would hold the moral and symbolic center of the crown, while those who opposed it risked irrelevance or permanent exclusion. In the shadows of Windsor and Clarence House, a silent, high-stakes chess game had begun, and Catherine was at its epicenter. Prince Philip included a clause in his letter barring Camilla and her descendants from accessing his fortune. But can King Charles use his influence to change this in Camilla's favor? Or will he honor his father's wishes no matter what? Now let's unravel a king torn between love and legacy. Charles at the breaking point. King Charles found himself thrust into a crisis of a magnitude no royal scandal had ever prepared him for. The revelation of Prince Philip's final decree left him cornered between two impossible choices: stand by Camilla, his wife, confidant and emotional anchor, or honor the unmistakably deliberate instructions of his father, a directive designed to fortify the future reign of William and Catherine. Every moment weighed heavily upon him, each option laden with personal sacrifice and political consequence. The private chambers of Balmoral, once a sanctuary of reflection, transformed into the epicenter of sleepless nights, moral uncertainty, and relentless pressure from every corner of the palace. Inside those stone walls, the emotional storm was palpable. King Charles walked the long, echoing corridors alone, hands clenched, pacing with a tension that betrayed his inner torment. Advisors, ever aware of the stakes, approached cautiously, offering counsel with careful wording, yet none could provide a clear path through the thicket of loyalty, legacy, and personal conviction. Each tick of the clock reminded him that Philip's wishes were not casual suggestions. They were deliberate, strategically timed, and impossible to ignore. Into this tense moment stepped Prince William, called to speak privately with his father in a room heavy with history. Calm but firm, he warned Charles that the monarchy could not survive if personal loyalties outweighed duty. He urged him to protect public trust, reminding him that the world watches every move and that future generations would judge a king by courage and clarity, not indulgence. His words struck like a quiet but powerful reckoning, leaving Charles shaken. The Archbishop of Canterbury, called upon for spiritual and moral guidance, added another layer of counsel. He spoke of duty, of the sacred obligations that accompany the crown, and the need to reconcile personal love with the greater responsibility owed to the nation. Every word weighed upon Charles, layering the burden of conscience atop an already fragile emotional state. Meanwhile, Princess Anne remained a quiet, unwavering presence. She did not speak loudly, nor intervene directly, but her steadfast adherence to Philip's intentions and her methodical execution of his wishes acted as a subtle yet powerful influence. Through her, Philip's final will continued to exert its force, a silent hand guiding the course of the palace even in his absence. Finally, after days of tension and contemplation, Charles engaged in a private, undisclosed conversation with Catherine. The nature of their dialogue remained shrouded in secrecy, but those close to the palace noted a shift in the king. He emerged more withdrawn, contemplative, and almost resigned, as though a weight had been lifted, yet simultaneously a wound had been opened. Something in Philip's letter had penetrated deeply, breaking open old certainties and forcing Charles to confront the gravity of his position. But while the palace, advisors, and senior royals waited with bated breath to see which path Charles would choose, Catherine made a move no one anticipated. Her decision would not just honor Philip's legacy, it would reshape the power dynamics of the monarchy itself, setting the stage for a transformation that was both subtle and profound. A calculated assertion of authority that would leave observers stunned and the royal household forever changed. King Charles finds it hard to decide, caught between the letter and everyone involved. But will the fortune just sit there while he hesitates, or will Catherine act quickly to take charge? Now, let's explore how Catherine made her bold move and took control of the legacy left to her. A new royal era begins. Instead of stepping forward to claim Prince Philip's vast personal fortune for herself, Catherine made a decision that was both bold and visionary. She transformed it, recognizing that the Duke of Edinburgh's legacy extended far beyond money, titles, or personal gain. She established the Philip Stewardship Trust, a structure designed to honor his principles while remaining transparent, forward-looking, and entirely beyond the reach of Camilla or any faction seeking to exploit it. It was a move that combined intelligence, discretion, and strategy, one that turned a potential flashpoint into an enduring instrument of royal purpose. Every single penny of Philip's carefully accumulated wealth, long kept separate from crown assets, was redirected toward causes that would shape the future. From initiatives that foster youth leadership to programs supporting veterans, environmental stewardship projects, and educational opportunities for the next generation of heirs, the trust became a living embodiment of Philip's lifelong commitment to service and duty. In doing so, Catherine ensured that his legacy would not merely remain in static preservation, but would actively nurture values of responsibility, resilience, and moral integrity in the generations to come. The public response was immediate and unprecedented. Catherine, long admired for her poise and discretion, was suddenly hailed as the monarchy's moral compass. Editorials and social media alike framed her as the embodiment of the principles Philip had cherished: steadfast duty, quiet resilience, and unwavering loyalty to both family and institution. In the eyes of the world, she had not just inherited a fortune, she had inherited a mantle of responsibility, and she wore it with unmatched grace. Then came a moment that stunned royal observers even further. During a seemingly ordinary public engagement, Prince George, only 12 years old, made a calm, measured statement. "I'll do what great-grandpa asked. I'll take care of it." Though spoken in the simplicity of a child's voice, the weight of the words resonated deeply. To those who understood the family's inner workings, it was a clear indication that Philip's long game was not intended for Charles or Camilla. It was meant for the future king, the next steward of the monarchy in waiting. Whispers began to circulate that Philip had also left additional private archives, letters, and instructions intended exclusively for George, ensuring that the lessons, warnings, and principles of his lifetime would guide the next generation. The letter that had once lain quietly in a vault, seemingly just another private document, had now reshaped alliances, redefined influence, and anchored the monarchy's future firmly in the hands of Catherine and her children. Every subtle maneuver, every strategic pause, and every silent observation Philip had made in his final years had culminated in this moment of enduring legacy. Philip's message, delivered in the silence of sealed envelopes and the quiet of carefully guarded archives, was unmistakable. His legacy, and the wealth he had amassed, belonged to the future he trusted. That future was not Camilla, nor the faction she represented, nor even the immediate comforts of royal protocol. It was Catherine, it was William, and it was the next generation of heirs who would inherit not only a fortune, but a framework for duty, integrity, and stewardship that would guide the monarchy for decades to come. In transforming a private fortune into a public, principled legacy, Catherine did more than honor Philip. She ensured that his vision for the crown would endure, silently but powerfully, for generations yet to come. So, what do you think about Prince Philip's letter? Could it transform leadership within the monarchy? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.